Well, welcome everyone to this evening's LinkedIn Live with the Innovator Circle. I'm very pleased and honored that this evening joining me from our systems is Nitesh Bansal. So
Hi.
welcome Nitesh.
Hi, Lorraine. How are you doing?
Very well. Thank you for joining us this evening, for being part of the Innovator Circle. Nitesh, I interviewed him for my book, which is coming out after the first of the year to be published by Columbia Business School, No Fear, No Failure. And Nitesh was just such an interesting and impressive interview that I knew when we resurrected our LinkedIn Lives with the Innovator Circle that he needed to be one of the first guests. So I'm really glad that this timing worked out for you, Nitesh.
Thank you.
I'd
I'm
like,
glad that I could join you.
yes. Let me go ahead and give a background on Nitesh before we get started on today's discussion about innovation on the front line, looking at inside out and outside in innovation with both teams in the company as well as with our customers. So Nitesh joined our systems as CEO last year, stepping into the leadership of a globally established digital engineering firm with a strong legacy driving technology led transformation. Today, we're going to discuss his approach to leading innovation at our systems and how he's shaping its next phase of growth. Nitesh started his career as a CPA accountant and then spent over 2 decades at Infosys, where he led engineering services and managed a billion-dollar P&L across global markets. He has shaped strategic initiatives across Fortune 100 companies and served on prestigious councils and advisory boards. Over the next 30 minutes, we will explore the dynamics of inside out and inside and outside in innovation, how teams and clients are co-creating the future. And Nitesh, before we wrap up, if we have time, I would like very much for you to share reflections on your own career path with our audience. I'm sure many CPAs are interested in how you made that transition. And of course, you can't have any conversation these days without at least touching on AI and what it's like to think about the opportunities and challenges of AI as you move our systems into its next phase of growth. So, turning the mic over to you, Nitesh, how, in your view, have you been able to approach this idea of inside out innovation, motivating teams, driving growth, encouraging creativity, shaping the culture? I would imagine that you've got some tips and tricks and things that you've done that have worked successfully for you. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic.
No, thanks, Lorraine. And it's a pleasure talking to you. And I really enjoyed our discussions earlier also through the process of your writing the book. And I'm really looking forward to it coming out. For me, as I look at inside out innovation, it's actually all about inculcating the idea or the spirit of innovation in people because innovation is not a corner office job, right? It's not about a few people sitting down with a thinking caps on and suddenly eureka moments happen and innovation happen. It's actually, it's a discipline which runs across the organization and can happen only when everybody, right from grassroots level all the way to the managerial layers, are encouraged to think innovatively. And thinking innovatively, may sound cliche, but it's basically about being curious, being questioning the status quo, asking a question as to why am I doing this, right? Why am I doing it the way I'm doing it, right? Is there a better way to do it, right? Is there a real understanding of what the outcome needs to be? Because if we know what the outcome needs to be, maybe there is a better way of getting the outcome, right? And better may still not be known, right? Because quite often we may actually hold ourselves back because we are not sure whether it is really better, right? And hence maybe the first question to ask is there another way of getting there, and then proving the hypothesis whether it was better or not, right? So encouraging that curiosity, encouraging that ability to ask question, ability to then experiment, and not making failure a stigma are a few things that need to be not just talked about, but demonstrated across the organization. And it's only through that that we can bring about a culture of innovation, as I call it. And that's the only way inside out innovation actually starts happening. Right. So, yeah, I mean, long story short, you've got to have everybody in the organization thinking that I can question.
Yeah, very good. And I know, Nitesh, you had shared with me ways that you inspired and encouraged everybody up and down the organization to focus on the customer, talk with them, solve their problems, because in a large corporation, getting people to solve problems and be curious and work on outcomes, it's so important that a lot of that is centered around the customer. And the other important caveat that you mentioned was discipline. So
Yeah.
I'm a big believer that innovation is not about throwing everything at the wall and hoping something's going to
What will
stick,
stick? Yeah.
but it's absolutely a disciplined process where
Mhm.
you know what your strategy is, you know what your outcomes and goals are, and you're innovating, but you're doing it within some guardrails or with some boundaries that ensure that it's going to be meaningful. But
That's
how do you motivate the largeness in an organization? How do you get the critical mass motivated? And I guess a corollary of that is, what are some of the things that you've done in order to create a safe environment to experiment and to innovate so that we abolish that fear, that failure word?
But Lauren, I'll answer that first with the caveat that it's easier said than done. Just because I have the opportunity today to answer the question does not mean I've got it all, right? So I'm still on the journey. We are all experimenting and we are all discovering and finding new ways of improving that, right? However, a few of the things that have worked, and especially in our industry, because we are solving engineering problems, writing software and software products for our customers, nothing motivates our employees and our colleagues more than a customer appreciation. Solving a real life customer problem or getting the kudos from the customer for having done something, really well or even better than they had imagined. And that's the kind of inherent motivation that everybody is driving with, right? So, giving a simple formula, and I don't take credit for it. This I have learned from my erstwhile, the CEO of Infosys and mentor, Dr. Vishal Sikka, and he had kind of, said that, you know, everybody needs to be close enough to the problem in order to find what could be different ways of solving the problem. So, zero distance to the problem is very important. And when you are really close to the problem, asking the two why questions, one what question as we call it, right? Why is this needed? Why are we doing it this way? What can be done differently can actually give rise to some of those innovation ideas. To give you an example, and how some of this inside out innovation actually can lead into things that we did not imagine, right? And when the customer gets involved and the true potential of it comes out, working with a very large media OTT type of a company who also have their own production house. We started off on a problem statement, which was to create some kind of a knowledge sharing, centralized knowledge sharing repository so that their different production teams could share best practices in multiple languages as they're producing content in multiple languages. And this was originally supposed to help what you call the above the line talent, or people who are like producers, creative directors, screenwriters, so that they can get their act together. And then as this knowledge sharing kind of in multiple languages became used, it was very quickly that this media company realized that it's not just above the line, but even below the line talent, people like editors and sound technicians and color artists could use the same knowledge sharing platform. And very soon, there was so much knowledge encapsulated in it that it became hubs. It became regional hubs. And now that regional hubs can actually host content, not just do knowledge sharing, right? And that became almost a new, what you would call a monetizable or a new revenue stream for the platform. Now, what started off as a simple problem statement of now that, and this is obviously, COVID gave us a lot of these things, right? Now in the COVID time when we have distributed teams, but we're producing content, but we want to share knowledge, let's put something in place, to now what became real regional hubs of content and playing that up. So a lot of this happens that way. Then making this example visible to the organization, talking about it from the stage that I get as the CEO of the company, during the town halls, during the award presentations, is a way to encourage people to do more of those activities, right? And to become heroes, to get their day, their moment in the spotlight. And then also making sure that when we do hit some of those challenges, failures, or some things did not work out, we actually do not ever, try and discourage anybody or use them as examples of, see, that didn't work, right? Because that will discourage people. So it's a lot about modeling the behavior and encouraging people to take that risk.
Very good. I really like that story, Nitesh, and particularly how it was outcomes focused, but you allowed it to develop organically as you found other problems, other use cases that it was relevant to. And that really is the spirit of innovation. But you still had discipline because you knew what your objectives, your budget, and your overarching goals were. You mentioned an important point about modeling behaviors. And I think that it is important to establish what we might call rituals in an organization so that you have a common language. One head of a company that I had spoken with talked about the fact that when the company was a startup, they had pancake breakfasts as they interviewed new employees. And it just became a fun way to get to know somebody. And over the pancake breakfast, they found out if they were the right fit for the company. But it became a ritual. And as the company expanded into India and China and other countries, this still became a way that they would interview and vet new employees. Could you speak to any rituals or outward symbols or values that you have found particularly work well in your organization?
So, two things over there. Number one, as a leader, leading by example is definitely something that works. It's timeless, it's ageless. It has to be the case. So, encouraging every leader, one level below me, two levels below me, to demonstrate the kind of behavior we want everybody to have. But the second thing is that in the post-COVID world, a lot of things changed. And one of the things that changed is the fact that the entire organization is not working from offices anymore. So it's almost a essentially hybrid sort of working. And there are some people who come to office a few days a week. There are some who would never come to office because they're more or less remote. And hence being able to do things or bring in the good practices from the past, like the brown bag lunch or, like you mentioned, pancake breakfast, etc., have become a little more difficult. So what we've used is, being a technology company, we put technology to use, right? So using some of the gamification principles, being able to give out badges or honor people for their achievements, have badges that they can display on their LinkedIn, on their internal, social channels, by which they get recognized. And then as they earn more badges, they earn more reward points. Some of those reward points turn into actual rewards, which can be encashed on. So we have a centralized portal on which this gets published. People can then celebrate people's achievements. They will get likes and claps and confetti and all of that stuff. And then as they collect badges, they go up in the rank. Then they get rewards, which can be encashed on the site, and eventually that also gets them nominated to what is the Oscars of our company, the annual Excellence Awards, and there a panel of jury will obviously select the best candidates to win, and some very, very good awards. Actually, some of them are, they include some vacation outside or dinner with family or bunch of those kind of things.
Wow, I wish I had some confetti in my system that we're on today because I would sprinkle it all over. I love that example, Nitesh. That's terrific.
No, people love it.
Yeah. Are there any particular ideas that have come forward that you'd like to mention?
Well, in innovation terms, as this has kind of become more widespread and more people are participating, we are seeing lots and lots of ideas come forward, and people usually lean into the customers and the projects that they're working on to kind of find some of those ideas. One very interesting one, which not only is a great innovation idea, but we've seen how it gets applied across, is with a new age platform whose objective was to find intelligence in video content. Very simple. You have video content, and you may be able to ask questions on it, or write a summary out of it, or create a mini clip so that you can show a trailer of the content. And that was the objective of the platform. And our teams working on it figured out a very nice, neat AI based, writing an LLM behind it, an AI based mechanism of arriving at those things. But as people worked on the LLM, they realized that they can not only find the excerpts out of the video content, etc. They can also do topic based segmentation of clips. They could also create AI avatars, people, or a kind of a AI clip which can explain the content in different, like a human avatar kind of a thing. You can generate a complete quiz. If it was a training material, you could generate a complete quiz behind it. You could create annotations and automated note takings. Now, these are all elements that were not imagined in the beginning, but came out as the capability of what the team did. So not only was this customer extremely happy, but we realized in working together with the customer that this capability now can go into multiple industries.
Mm-hmm.
And jointly with them, we have now taken into the edtech world, where education and educating, K to 12 kids with a humanoid or human avatar, or doing mini quizzes and breaking up the video clips, etc., has become very possible. We are taking it to customer service industry, where helping clients understand how to use a product, how to do DIY self repair of a product can easily be explained using this technology. And this is like, still in the works. I mean, this is like expanding every day. So these are some of those ideas that really make me very happy. And as we talk about it to others, they're like, wow, I mean, this is great.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned AI, and this is like one of those kind of use cases where AI, has lent itself to find so many new use cases that we are also looking at. Wow, that's the power of what can be done using technology.
Yeah, and thinking about the appropriate use case for AI. I mean,
Yeah,
it sounds as though it was very appropriate and relevant to this situation to be able to annotate and work with content, and was an accelerator in terms of being able to develop this platform. So that's a terrific example because it shows the innovation with the team as you created the platform. Then you turned your attention to the client, it sounds as though, to help refine it.
yeah,
Then you were able to take it out and apply it to different industries. So truly grew out very organically. Are there certain, when we talk a little bit about maybe shifting gears and talking about innovating with a client or bringing a new product, solution, or service to market with a client, what approaches have you seen work? What kind of business models, in this day and age of collaboration, how do you make sure that there's something in it for both parties?
absolutely. No, I mean, no innovation can thrive if it was a zero sum game, right? So there has to be, in an ideal world, it has to be a equal win-win for all parties. But we normally don't live in an ideal world, and there is obviously elements of who contributed what, and where was the primary IP, or whose idea it was, and who has got the access to the market. But everything else considered, basic tenet of that, I was able to innovate something on your platform, and hence both of us have something to gain. The first area to reach or go after is where your customer is my customer, meaning we have a common set of customers where both of us will gain. So it's not about you pay me money for something or I pay you money for something. No, let's go and expand the business. And when we expand the business, this was a business you were not going after. This was a business I was originally not going after. We actually expanded the size of the pie. We created a new market segment. And in that market segment, finding an acceptance, finding a meaningful formula of splitting that revenue, whether it's 40, 60, 50, 50, 30, 70, regardless, a meaningful way of collaborating and splitting becomes far easier. And then once you create that success, where neither of us are fighting about whether it was my client or yours, because it was an entirely new market, carrying that success backward into the organization, into everything else that we do becomes far easier. But clearly, it has to start with creating the room for us to work together, right? If we were to sit with it saying, now we have created this beautiful LLM over this video content thing, that's my thing, I'm never going to share, then this entire ability to take it to alternate industries would have not even come to light. It won't have started at all, right? And that's the big realization, that we live in a world where the ecosystem is more powerful than the individual players. And the more we can collaborate, understand what's in it for each of us, and bring the power of ecosystem together, the more we'd be able to do, right? And that's why we continue to see like open system, open source, all sorts of technologies have become so far advanced because of the collaboration globally that they're able to get.
Yeah, so the collaboration, the openness to the innovation, the trying to find the win-win. And then you bring up a very important point, and that's trust. How long did it take for you to cultivate this relationship and build that kind of trust where you could come to the table and look at this net new opportunity, know that there were risks, but decide to proceed and do it in the best interest of both parties? That must have taken a while.
Surprisingly, Lorraine, not too much, right? Because I think, and just to give you the profile of the company, it's a tech platform, so you know that the founders are very techie kind of people, funded by a private equity. So there is someone sitting over there who's very business minded, right? And when they saw the power of technology and a potential new business area that we could work together on, I think it was a question of how do we start? And then when they heard us talk about, you keep your business, we're keeping our business, let's go after a new market, let's expand what we're doing, I don't think there was too much of a discussion.
Yeah.
Now, of course, as we go along, as we try and penetrate deeper into maybe one of their traditional client bases, right? Or they want to go into our client base, because there will be certain clients who are possibly the right targets for this technology or this kind of innovation. Maybe we'll have a little more discussion, but the foundation has been set very well.
Yeah, I mean, that is a wonderful testimony to our systems, to you, the leadership, the team that you've assembled, because I think that's really an ideal way to collaborate and innovate with your customers. That's a terrific story. My next question actually was going to be, as you think back in your career, what has been the innovation that you're most proud of? And then, because we have to talk about failure. You didn't think you were going to get away not talking about failure. What mistake have you made, or what innovation didn't work out that you wish had, but you've learned a lesson from it? So just give us those two bookends.
Well, to keep it simple, one of my favorite examples of innovation that really worked, and usually, these are not big things; these are small things which make a big impact. Was again earlier in my career, when we were talking about, everybody asking or questioning the status quo. There's somebody, a developer in the team, who questioned the status quo on a request that came to him from the client to change the price on a pricing database of a certain object, right? And normally it was a simple request, came in, somebody changes the price, sends it back, somebody tests it, and gets rolled out. But that particular day, this person decided to ask the question and said, why do you want this to be changed? And it was a large retail chain whose pricing database was being worked upon. And the customer answered saying, we want to discount this particular article because it's not selling much. So then he asked the second question, that why do you want to discount it all across the board? You've got thousands of stores. If I change it here, it will discount everywhere else. Customer said, well, we have no other mechanism. If you discount it once, it's discounted everywhere. He said, do you really want to discount it everywhere? They said, no, well, if we had it our way, we'll discount it in the southern stores and not discount in the northern stores. Said, well, I can put a flag. Said, can you? Yeah, we have stores by numbers. I know which numbers represent, there's a number sequence, and I can easily put a formula which says any number above this, don't discount, below this, discount. Said, okay, great. One small change, but it saved millions of dollars in unnecessary discounting of an article that they would have gone through. And I still marvel at the miniature nature of this innovation and the massive impact that it created, right? Looking at the other side of the story, right? Innovation that did not work. When IoT and AI was fairly new, and we were all trying to solve world's biggest problems with IoT and AI, my team worked upon creating a digital twin of an aircraft engine, right? And we were very successful in creating it. And we created an entire operating digital twin of the engine, and we tried to basically predict failures as they happen in the future. And while this was a massive exercise and massively potentially valuable, we never saw that getting implemented. And we realized why we did not see that getting implemented is because reality is that when the aircraft is in the flight, the elements, whether it's a bird, whether it's dust cloud, whether it is a storm cloud or icicles or whatever it will face. It is what the engine is built for. That's the sturdiness of the engine. When it comes to the ground, the crew, which has got years of experience examining the engine and certifying that it's ready to take its next flight, is going to do their job. They do not have the time or the infrastructure to at that time download the schema of the engine, get the real operating parameters of the engine, mash it all up, look at it through a VR lens, and find out what happened where. Because they do it day in and day out. They have to turn the flight around in the next hour or so. And the more time the flight stays on ground, the more money the airline loses. So the value realization or the viability of what was done was not really going to lend itself to a useful use case. Whereas from an engineering perspective, it was a marvelous thing to do, right? So great innovation idea, but never saw the light of the day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure after so many years now, there are elements of it which have been incorporated in the MRO, engineers' workbooks, etc. But the imagination was like to solve the ultimate problem, and so a lot of times, we go after something that looks very sexy, very big, a real big problem to solve, but value a lot of times lies in a lot of those small things that we can sort on the way.
Yeah, no, very interesting example, because you really do have to look at the problem through the eyes of all of the stakeholders and do a bit of an analysis to understand what each of their worlds and experiences are in order to make sure that your problem is really solving the right solution and something that can be implemented by the various stakeholders. So that's a great
Indeed.
example of working on a technology for a technical audience that wasn't necessarily relevant to the process of turning the plane around. It's a really good. And those examples are they're clear as day when you are looking at them in the rear view mirror, Nitesh, but they're not clear as day when you're in the middle of them.
No, at that time you're enamored by the beauty of the job you're doing, right? Wow, we've created a digital twin. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
until we're on the other side. And so, with the last minute that we have, I'd like you to comment. What is your stance on AI when you talk to your organization about it? Obviously, there's fear, there's opportunity, there's a lot of worry about displacement of jobs. What's your overall philosophy about AI?
So a few things that I'm very clear about. I mean, AI is an opportunity. It's an unprecedented opportunity for everyone. And whether you are in technology work, whether you are in physical manual work, whether you're in whatever kind of work area you are in, it's an opportunity. It's an unprecedented opportunity because of what it offers. It's also unforgiving because it's innovation at such a pace that you have to do something to keep up with it, right? You don't keep up, you do feel left behind, and it's not just a feeling. You do get feeling left behind. Third thing is for organizations and for like ours and our customers, it's always very, very important to continue to retrain and continue to bring up the workforce to be ready to use AI, right? I used to give this example a long time ago, right? Saying that as we are getting into big data and insights, and we are offering these insights to factory managers, who's going to teach them that instead of looking at the actual machine, they now need to look at a dashboard to determine what the machine is doing. And that's the training that we need to do, right? Same thing happens with AI. And last but not the least, the again identifying where the value is, not getting lost in doing technology for technology's sake, but continuing to keep the eye on the prize is very, very. Just because somebody else is using it for something does not mean I need to use it for that, right? And last but not the least, it's not about job losses. It's not about taking away jobs. It's just redefining what our job today means,
Yeah.
right? And for all of us in every space.
Well said. I like your approach and your philosophy. Well said. I couldn't agree. We don't do technology for technology's sake, and eventually this will all work out. We'll have new jobs, new ways of doing things, and we have to embrace it and just use it appropriately. So
Absolutely.
thank
And
you for
I
that.
probably just want to add a sentence because I continue to believe in this and continue to say this, that the fundamental purpose of technology is to elevate human experience. So wherever we're using AI or whatever form of technology, it must lead towards elevating the human experience, either the human who's involved in doing this or the human who's at the end of the stream consuming it, or the overall society and the people around us. Ultimately it should be elevating the experience that it produces.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I would leave it at that because that was a nice way to close. But I'm going to ask you one more little challenge question for our audience. And if you now today were giving advice to your younger self, starting out in your career, knowing everything that you do about technology and AI and the environment that we're in, what advice would you give yourself, Nitesh?
Well, if I could, go back in time and maybe 20 years, the advice I would give to myself is A, of course, remain curious and be more curious. But more importantly, don't be afraid of experimentation, because experimenting, trying things out, failing fast is the only way of A, developing the empathy or the learning of what it really means and what it can do. Because we are living in an age where imagination can fall short. And unless we take those baby steps to do something, we'll not know what the power and the potential is. And we, essentially ask the questions, because two things that I think when 20 years ago, when I was growing up, A, to gain knowledge, we read a lot, we could not do a lot. Now setting up something, assembling technology on cloud, getting some license, putting something together has become very easy. And B, growing up in that era, or at that time, I'm calling it an era 20 years ago, but at that time, asking a question, you sometimes thought, what if it feels stupid, right? And now we are in a world where no question is stupid. And if you are asking the question, you'll find there are 20 other people who ask the same question, and the community is ready to help you. And there are so many people in the same boat. So I would say be more curious, do more experiments, don't be afraid.
All right. No fear, no failure. Perfect. Well, Nitesh, thank you for spending 30 minutes with us and sharing these experiences and examples and your philosophy. It's been a very robust discussion, and I appreciate you taking the time to do it. I think that we've addressed all of the questions that we were planning to tackle here today. So I wish you a nice evening, and say good night also to our audience. Thank you for joining us tonight, and look for our next LinkedIn Live next month.
Thank you, Lorraine. It was a pleasure.